Good morning, fellow soul seekers. My name is Ilene, and I am blessed to be here with you today leading this service. The topic for this Independence Day is freedom from the soul. And today, I will focus on freedom, on how it connects to our ego and our fears. So the meaning of ego in psychology is based on the reality principle. And there are times that the ego can get in the way. There has been much written about freedom and how individuals may find methods of spiritual freedom from ego and fear. I'll read a few quotes from the masters. They've achieved enlightenment from ego and fear. It is written in the book of Mark and Luke that Jesus said, "Not my will, but thy will be done." And Yogananda said, "Soul freedom is the power to act by soul guidance, not by the compulsions of desires and habits. Obeying ego can lead to destruction." In the book Awake that accompanies the movie about Yogananda's life, there's a conversation between Herb Jeffries. He is a famous jazz singer and actor from the 30s all the way to his transition in 2014. He was very beloved by the SRF community and had his memorial at the Lake Shrine. Herb would go around the world doing his singing gigs and doing his movies, but he always would come back to the ashram to meditate with Yogananda. But like so many of us have experienced, he read Yogananda's book and something hits you in the head when you read that book, and you remember that you're supposed to be somewhere doing something. And he found himself at the Yogananda's ashram in Mount Washington, screaming to the nuns who were at the door that he absolutely had to meet Yogananda. And the nuns had no idea who he was and really didn't care. They had that happen every day. But he made such a fuss that Yogananda called down to send him up. And thus began the many years experience of going to the ashram between gigs and movies. One day, Herb asked Yogananda. Herb had been raised in a very religious background, and he'd always been told what you can't do. Thou canst this and thou canst that. So he asked Yogananda, "What canst thou do?" And Yogananda asked him, "Do you drink alcoholic beverages?" "Yes." "Well, you can continue." "Do you take drugs?" And at that time, all of the musicians were using marijuana. He said, "Well, yes." He said, "You may continue." "Do you chase women?" And Herb said, "Of course." "Well, you may continue." "Do you steal?" He goes, "Well, I steal musicians." He goes, "You may continue." And Herb said, "You mean to tell me I can do all those things and still come out here and meditate at the ashram?" And Yogananda said, "Of course, but I cannot promise you that those desires will not fall away as you spend more time communing with Spirit." What a wonderful story. Every day we have the opportunity to commune with Spirit and find the opportunity of having those desires fall away. And we look for a more pure connection with God. Herb had been in a horrible airplane accident, and he was in excruciating pain. And this happened at a time where spinal surgery had not really come to where it is these days. And he was trying to avoid having to have the surgery. But with the tutelage of Yogananda, he was able to fuse his spine back together, and he was healed. And he was free of the physical pain. In other words, with Master's training, he was able to set aside his ego and his fears and became contained, healed within his spirit and his body. I love that story. So many wonderful stories about people having interactions with Yogananda and worrying about their sins and whether or not they were going to go to hell, and all they needed to do was become balanced to the ego and face their fears. And Yogananda said, you realize that all along there was something tremendous within you and you didn't even know it. What a great statement. And it's true. Freedom from fear and overcoming a challenge can be a life-changing event. Some years back, I was fortunate and blessed to work as a case manager at a homeless shelter. One of my clients came in to get some assistance with his job seeking, and he told me his story. He shared with me that he had lost his business, he had lost his family, he had lost all of his possessions, and finally lost his vehicle. He had one set of clothing on, and he was sitting on a curb one day, smoking his very last cigarette. He realized there was only one way to go, and that was up. He had an epiphany at that moment. He overcame his ego and his fears. Freedom for him, as he had described it to me, was freedom from fear of the substances that had enslaved him for most of his life. He had freedom from his ego that resulted in his ability to accept the reality of his situation and change it. No excuses. This man faced his fears head on and was honest with himself. He made that decision on that curb that day to change his life. And he did change his life. I watched him go back to becoming a productive member of society. Working with the homeless, I heard a lot of stories, a lot of blaming, a lot of excuses. But let me tell you one more story about a homeless person that has always touched my heart to the deepest recesses of it. This young lady, we referred to her as the homeless baby. She was born on the streets. She was put into foster care at an early age. Her mother died from needle use and AIDS. Her father died of alcohol use. By the age of 18, she had had 2 babies taken away from her in the delivery room due to drug use. We all loved her, and we hoped one day she would become successful. And she did become successful. Years later, on my Facebook feed, her face popped up. And I sent her a friend request. She accepted it. And we have remained friends all these years. She moved away from her homeless family. The homeless family are the people that you hang around with on the street. She moved away from them. She moved to the East Coast. She runs a farm. Who would have thought that? And she's just doing fabulously today, and every day she posts about how God saved her. Yes, she faced her egos and her fears, and she changed her life. Deepak Chopra shared a thought in Freedom from the Ego. You have to step outside of the realm of the ego completely to extricate yourself from it. While meditating a few mornings ago, a famous song written by Chris Christopherson and Fred Foster popped into my consciousness. It goes like this. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. It's about 2 young people down on their luck. Somehow they got stuck in Salinas. They lost their car. They lost all their possessions. They really had nothing left. They also realized that they had no demands on them because they had nothing else to lose. So the song goes on to say, nothing ain't worth nothing, but you know what? It's free. What a great thought. When we bring ourselves into oneness, we are free, stepping outside of ourselves, reaching toward the spirit of freedom from ego, and it's free. And I think of all the other free things that we can enjoy. The sound of birds chirping, the wind through the trees, such a wonderful sound, smelling a flower. All of this is free. We could take that moment of listening and experiencing what Mother Nature provides us and understand that at that moment we are experiencing freedom. Freedom separating ourselves from them or us or me is another step towards realization from ego. Baird Spalding puts it in a simple sentence. There is no more effective way to free your mind and world of discord than to positively know that your entire mind and body is the temple of God. That brought me to thoughts of other people who had achieved freedom from ego and fear. Thich Nhat Hanh. Gandhi, what an amazing life he had once he overcame fear and he faced it head on. Babaji, he has overcome his ego and fear and has no need for any earthly possessions. Jesus, he overcame his fear and faced his life's work with resolve. Monastic life, I think of the Dalai Lama, people who have embraced their inner self and have given up their egos and their fears and do great works for humanity, just to name a few. I have been reading a lot recently about self-healing. And what I know and what I've learned is that we have the ability within ourselves to heal ourselves and bring ourselves to the center and cast off the bonds of fear and ego. It's in us. It is in us like a light of harmonic resonance. It's there. All we need to do is access it. Norm Paulson, the founder of Sunburst, wrote in Sacred Science, "Ride your own life stream home," that the heart center is where the soul decides which direction to go. We know, and we can feel it, that the kingdom of God is already in each of us. Haven't we heard this before from the great masters? The kingdom of God. We are the God temple. What I found so remarkable about Norm was he was approachable and he was loving. He always presented as a brother, not as a guru. We were on equal ground with him. His ego had achieved spiritual freedom. At this time, we will have a short meditation. Please join us today and every day to commune together. If you don't have a method of meditation, just take a moment to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, resting silently. And whatever works for you, that you feel calm and you're in the center of your being. Join us for a short meditation. Welcome back, fellow soul seekers, on this beautiful day of independence that we celebrate. And thank you for joining us. A closing thought for your walk in spirit when your mind wanders during meditation. Remember that you live in the temple of God. Bring it back to the center of I am, and then continue. When you find your ego blustering forward, remind it that you live in the temple of God. Bring yourself back to the center of I am, and continue. And whenever you find yourself embarking on a path that may not be honoring the temple of God, bring yourself back to the center of God I am, and continue. There are several famous songs that I just love, and I sing to myself all the time. One is called Soul Power. Yes, we have soul power. Another one is Soul with a capital S, and when I sing it, I find myself, capital S, brings me back to my center. A beautiful moment to experience. And now I'm going to read a short prayer. God, I am that I am in the creative universe. Draw positive, loving energy towards my spirit that is abundant and balanced. My creative self affirms abundance, acceptance, and self-realization. Freedom from ego and fear is the mastery of self-realization and knowing that God, I am. And then we can write our own life stream home, returning to the infinite in body, soul, and spirit. Saint Teresa of Avila said, and I have been living by these words for many years, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. So my dear fellow soul travelers, you may continue and then don't give up. And I'm going to end with a closing prayer with my personal mantra, and I'm willing to share it with you, and you're willing to share it with as many people as you want to. Remember this. With every breath you take and every step you make and every thought awake, God, I am seeking spirit. Thank you for joining us today in the blessing of the independence of our soul from ego and fear. You are invited to join us every weekday morning for an online meditation, and for more information, contact the office. We would love to have you participate. Have a blessed day. Om.
Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path that leads to thee. To thee, that leads to thee, that leads to thee, that leads to thee. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me whisper in the temple of silence. Guide me to the right path. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence. Guide me to the right path that leads to thee, 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 that leads to thee. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path that leads to thee, 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 that leads to thee. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path that leads to thee, 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 that leads to thee. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path. Let thy whisper in the temple of silence guide me to the right path that leads to thee, 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 that leads to thee. Let thy whisper in the